Hello and welcome to PCTV on the Road, PCTV's adventure taking you throughout the various exciting locations of interest here in the city of Pittsfield. I'm Matthew Tucker, Pittsfield Community Television's Public Access Coordinator, and this is sort of an exciting episode of PCTV on the Road for me, because the idea of the PCTV on the Road production series was a seed that had been planted a long time ago by Pittsfield Community Television's original board of directors. But the first sprouts of that series came about a number of years ago in this very location, Hancock Shaker Village's Round Barn. A number of years ago, we did a set of productions here in the Round Barn. And that experience stuck with a number of our production staff, myself included, and it is what inspired the entire PCTV on the Road series that you have been seeing. So it's really neat to be able to be back here at Hancock Shaker Village in the Round Barn. And I am here with Lesley Herzberg, the curator of Hancock Shaker Village. Lesley, thank you for joining me today. So one of the sort of fundamental questions to understanding Hancock Shaker Village and the construction and how everything works and what people are experiencing when they come is to sort of ask that fundamental question, who were the Shakers?
Well, the Shakers were a group of people who got together in England, in Manchester, England. And they started out as a Quaker group. They then took on different influences of other religious groups in the area. So people like the French Camisards, there are some Methodists that were practicing with them. But they decided that the best way for them to worship was actually worshiping with song and dance. And that's really what sets the Shakers apart from Quakers, Amish, Mennonites, any of those groups, that the Shakers really believe that in worshiping God, they need to sing and dance, and that is what they do to this day. They actually don't dance any longer, but they do still sing in their worship services, and there are still two Shakers that are living today at Sabbath Day Lake in Maine. Wow,
very cool. So how did this Shaker movement come to the site in Hancock and begin this beautiful village and farm that you have come to curate and be responsible for the legacy of?
Well, the Shakers first came to America in 1774, and what happened was the leader of the Shakers, who was named Mother Ann, a woman named Mother Ann Lee, she brought 8 of her followers. They were being persecuted in England. They needed a way to practice their religion freely. So they came to America, and they actually came to New York City first, and then they moved up the Hudson, settled their first village outside of Albany, right near the Albany airport.
Okay.
And came to New Lebanon, which is just 5 miles over the hill here in New York, and then came to Hancock. Hancock was the 3rd village settled in the United States.
Wow.
And they were here about 1790, we believe, although there actually are notes in the town records. If you go to the Berkshire Athenaeum, you can actually look at town meeting notes from the 1780s, which are really interesting.
Jeez, really?
You can, yeah. So in 1781, they actually sent a group to investigate these people who are calling themselves Shakers out at this site and to see who they were and what they were up to. So they were here for a long time, calling themselves Shakers, but we say the village was officially settled in 1790.
Okay. And now, was the village sort of the starting point for the town of Hancock, or was that did that come separately?
That was separate.
Okay.
There were already farmers here. There were other people settled in Hancock. And those people, there were the people whose original farmhouses were part of the first converts, the first village. Some of those buildings still exist today, although they don't look like traditional farmhouses. They've been added on to, obviously.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yes. but those people were the first converts who were settlers in Hancock ahead of when the Shakers actually came here.
Okay. So at what point did we've got the settling date. At what point did sort of the iconic buildings of the Hancock Shaker Village, in particular the one we're sitting in right now, begin to take root and be constructed?
Well, so if we're settled in 1790, we usually say about the mid-19th century was kind of the era of the largest kind of building, the largest peak of community here. So we're looking at the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, the years before the Civil War.
Okay.
So the building we're sitting in today is our iconic roundstone barn, which was built in 1826 and improved upon many years after that date. So the Shakers were never ones to kind of sit on their laurels. They really thought, if we could make this better, we're going to make it better. So many improvements actually happened to the building. There was a fire, unfortunately, in 1864, but that gave them kind of the idea, why don't we make it better? We designed this wonderful building, but we could actually make it function even better for us and for the cows and for the farmers that are bringing the hay in. So that's what they did over subsequent years, their additions to the building.
What was the inspiration for the sort of the architecture and design? Was it a religious viewpoint that they were coming from in the design? Was it a trend at the time that they were building? Because you don't see a lot of buildings of this style, which is part of the reason why it's so iconic.
Exactly. The Shakers were not the first to build a round barn. They built many stone barns, however,
Okay.
but this one really functioned in a very specific way. So they were able to feed and milk 52 head of cattle in this barn. And there are actually 3 levels to the barn. So we are sitting on the cattle level, and we're actually sitting inside of what is called the hay mow. So all the hay would actually be right where we are sitting, dumped down from what is called the wagon level, which is just above us.
Okay.
So the wagons, we're actually sitting and looking at an open door above us. The wagons could come in on this level above us and circulate around,
Okay.
unload their hay, let gravity do the work for them. So you're actually not having to lift hay up into a hayloft, which many barns function in that way.
True.
Again, letting that hay fall down so that you can then feed the cattle at this level, and then continue around in a full circle so that you actually don't have to back up your wagon, don't have to back up your team. I don't know how to drive a team of horses or oxen, but I'm told it's difficult.
I can imagine that they probably aren't particularly excited about walking backwards.
Exactly. So they didn't want to make them do that. So they proceeded right around in a circle and right out the same door that they came in at.
And having been in the space, and I know that we've got a little bit of a camera angle of it, but I've been very curious about why that upper level was so sort of wide, because the level down here is very comfortable to walk through, but not as expansive as up there. It makes a lot of sense if that was built for wagons, with the way the ground slopes comes right into the door, can go all the way around and drop the hay in. That's fabulous.
It's what's called a bank barn, and bank barns are very common, but the way that the Shakers used it was that there was an entrance on every level from the ground level. So you're right, you can drive your wagon right up a ramp, your cattle can enter from the ground, and actually below us is what's called the manure level, and that was one of the things that they added later, but that they could clean the manure right out from behind the cattle. It would fall down to another level. They could go down in a wagon, collect that manure, bring it right out to the gardens, and you have your fertilizer right there.
Jeez. That is extremely impressive. So, and I've noticed that sort of one of the popular components to the barn is the animals that are right off the extension here. Was that part of that expansion period after the fire? Is that sort of an original use of that space, or was that added later by the folks who've been taking care of the barn since?
Well, the barn has always been home to, Hancock was a dairy farm. It was a large dairy farm, but that was their primary work here at Hancock. All the Shaker villages kind of had their own work that they did. That was their primary source of income.
Okay.
Hancock's was dairying, and so the Roundstone barn is kind of a testament to that work. But it's always had what we would call L's, and so we talk about the animals in this L over here, which we call the dairy L. And then we have a few other L's that kind of jut off from the main body of the barn. And there were many over the years. Some of them are no longer here. If you look at the historic photos, there are actually many other L's that were housing animals. The animals that we house here today are a continuation of the Shakers' heritage breeds that they did raise.
Oh, wow.
So the dairy cows, but also our merino sheep. The Shakers were some of the first to raise merino sheep in Pittsfield.
Wow.
After Elkanah Watson had his first agricultural fair in Pittsfield, which is one of our claims to fame.
Absolutely.
But they brought in these breeds that were, again, efficient, innovative. That's all what the Shakers were about. And wrinkly merinos actually produce more wool because of the wrinkles in their skin.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
So all of our heritage breeds, except for our goats, the Shakers did not raise goats, but all the rest of the heritage breeds here are the breeds that the Shakers would have raised
So
while they were here.
They're not necessarily relatives of the ones that were here originally, but they are of the same type of animal.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Very cool. So we've heard a little bit about the history of the construction of the building, the creation of the village, and the work that was done as far as being an operational dairy farm. At what point did the space begin to make the transition? And I know it's still very much an operating farm, but at what point did it sort of make that transition towards less living place, more museum?
Well, that happened. The Shakers obviously have been in decline for many years. As I said, after the Civil War was really once they started to have fewer in number. And so as the numbers grew much smaller, they couldn't really take care of the entire village as they used to. At the height in the mid-19th century, they had about 300 people here to work and take care of the village. And so they started bringing in people that they hired. They had separate living quarters for them. They actually didn't live with the Shakers. We couldn't have those kinds of outside worldly influences with the Shakers. But the hired men came and were able to help them kind of keep the farm going for probably much longer than the Shakers themselves were able to do that. So the decline obviously happened over a number of years. And by the late 1950s, the last Shakers were here. And the Shaker Central Ministry, which was then based in Canterbury, New Hampshire, decided that Hancock did need to close. They needed to sell the land and the buildings. And they had a number of bids. One of them being for a racetrack.
Really?
A racetrack, yeah, a harness racing track. So thank goodness that did not come to fruition.
I should say.
But luckily, a group of concerned philanthropic citizens from the city of Pittsfield, led by Amy Bess Miller, who was our founder, got together and purchased the village in 1959, and we opened as a museum in 1960.
Very cool. Sort of to take a step back, because learning all sorts of fascinating stuff about the land and the usage and the buildings. You mentioned that the Shakers were in decline around the end of the Civil War. Is there sort of a specific reason attached to that, or was it just sort of a play of fate that the Shaker movement began to decline?
There are lots of reasons that historians talk about why the Shakers went into this period of decline. The Civil War was certainly one of them. People were able to leave the villages. The railroads came.
Okay.
The Shakers embraced the railroad, but at the same time, it was one of the factors that carried people away from them. It made people, during the Industrial Revolution, people were more able to go and find work in cities. The agrarian society wasn't thriving and wasn't supporting America the way it used to. You had these amazing mills. Women didn't need the protection of a place like the Shakers, like the Shaker Village. They could go and find jobs being unmarried young women in these mills. And so they were losing lots of these kind of younger members who normally would have maybe stayed on if they had come in an earlier time period. They also started adopting many children, and none of the children ended up very few of the children, I should say, ended up staying and becoming Shakers themselves. So there are lots of reasons for the decline. Society being what it is and what it has become, it's much harder to separate yourself from the world. And we all have many attachments, I think, even today.
Very
and it's
true.
a hard thing to do, to come and live in a society that's kind of closed off in a way.
Yeah, and separated from how everything else is going and functioning and doing. Okay. So jumping back to where we left off, 1960, what was the condition of the village at that point? Because I know that there was some restoration work done following that point to sort of bring things up to a point where future generations would be able to experience the village and continue to enjoy it. So what was the state of things and what brought it up to the state it's in today?
Well, our restoration work has been ongoing ever since 1960, and it's really a testament to the people who have kind of taken over this place. This building that we're in, I mean, if I showed you pictures of the way that it looked when the museum acquired it, I mean, it had large cracks. It had these giant buttresses holding the walls up. It was in a really precarious state, and so luckily, they had raised enough money by 1968 that they restored the barn. So luckily, many of the timbers you see are original, but a lot of are replacements so that the building could be preserved and look the way it did when it was built in 1826. Also, some of the first buildings they restored were the brick dwelling, where the Shakers obviously lived and ate. And so little by little, each building kind of got the restoration that it has needed, and that work continues to this day. So we'll be working actually on the manure level of this building this year to stabilize it, and the brick dwelling needs its windows replaced, so those are actually being replaced now. So every building kind of in turn has had its restoration kind of completed and really brought back to a state that it was in at the height of the village. So we're looking at the mid-19th century village. The Shakers made a lot of improvements over the years, and we wanted to, the museum administration at the time made the decision to bring it back to that mid-19th century, the height, the peak of the Shaker community, and show what it was like as a thriving community at that time.
I presume with a little bit of sort of flexibility there, because I could see it happen again, but I would imagine the round barn probably will never go back to full function as a dairy farm, would it?
I don't think so. We don't have that many cows here right now. That would be a lot more work than maybe we're all looking forward to, but we want to show people, how they would have milked the cows. And again, the Shakers were so progressive. The L that they added, where a lot of people come and they see our baby animals in the spring, that dairy L was added by the Shakers in about 1939. And so that was kind of the newest technology, how they were housing their cows at the time.
Okay.
So we're probably not going to go back to the 1830 version of how we were going to use the roundstone barn, but we can certainly interpret it for people.
Absolutely. Very, very cool. So now that we're up to today, what does Hancock Shaker Village offer folks who are interested to come and visit, other than these beautiful historic buildings?
Well, we offer a wide variety of opportunities for people. If you want to come and you're just interested in Shaker history, this is the perfect place to just come and learn about that. We have a variety of craftsmen on site, people making oval boxes, blacksmiths, spinning and weaving, all those traditional crafts that not many people know about these days. You can come here and learn how to do some of those through workshops or just visiting with our interpretive staff. And then what we're really about is we want people to have access to this as a community site. And so if you're interested in music, we have music offered. We have traditional music, and we also have our new barn concerts.
Nice.
So traditional folk music is really what we've been able to offer this summer and hope to continue to offer. If you're into athletics and you want to try some goat yoga, we also offer goat yoga.
That has made an extremely
I know.
big impact. I remember when I was beginning to sort of put things together for this first year of On the Road. And it was a challenge when you type in Hancock Shaker Village, getting it to not, having Google not finish the line with goat yoga, because it's desperately trying, which tells you that is it as popular as the internet seems to think it is?
I think it is. We continually sell out. People really want to come and really have these goats kind of surrounding you, as we knew there was a reason for our goats. Again, like I said, they weren't traditionally here. The Shakers didn't raise them. We do have them here today because they're so darn cute. You can't resist them. And so you're doing your yoga and you have the goats kind of wandering around and eating grass around you. It's been very popular, and we're so glad that people are finding another way to access the site and use the site in this kind of fun, relaxing way. And we have a few more dates this fall, so people can come on down and try goat yoga for themselves.
That's very cool. Are there any, you mentioned the music, mentioned the goat yoga. Baby animals, of course, is one of the most popular events in the springtime. That's sort of one of those Berkshire County staples. School children and tourist visitors alike are thrilled about the baby animals. Are there any other things that the museum is doing now that we didn't touch on?
Well, we have a few more new programs. We're doing some dinner programs with important speakers, important writers. Those are called our Food for Thought dinners. We have a few more of those this season. Again, more music, and we will be having some special holiday opportunities this year, which we haven't had in the past. We'll be open a little bit longer. We'll be open till November 12th.
Wow.
And then we'll have something called Holidays at Hancock. So you can kind of come and experience the village in the winter, which a lot of people don't get to do. And come and make ornaments and use our trail for cross-country skiing or snowshoeing. And you can still see our animals. That's always fun. It's a great holiday card if you want to take a picture with a cow. We keep advertising it as kissing the cows, but which you're welcome to do, but you can also just be right next to them. So there are lots of opportunities this season to kind of experience the village in a different time of year. And the holidays and the harvest, we'll do some haunted Hancock tours, which we haven't done before. If you want to hear some of our ghost stories, which there are some, I will tell you. So lots of ways to come back to Hancock, not just for baby animals, but come back and visit us throughout the year.
That all sounds like lots of fun, a very fantastic experience, keeping the spirit of the Shakers and the beautiful little village that they've created alive. Believe it or not, we're almost out of time for today's show, but I wanted to ask, is there anything that you want to make sure that our viewers know about the village that I failed to ask you about?
I think we've covered a lot of the bases. I think we're here and we're always ready to welcome visitors, and we want people to learn about the Shakers, and that's what we're here for. Our mission is really to bring the Shaker story to life and preserve it for future generations. So
And just because that spurred the gears in my brain there, I presume that's why you call your tour guides interpreters as opposed to something different, because they're helping people interpret the world of the Shakers. Even though it's not running, you're not seeing all of the pieces running the way that they ran at that point. You get to sort of go on this imagination journey with them about how things worked at the time.
Exactly. They are interpreting history for us, and they may not be in costume. We don't dress as Shakers as much anymore. But they are here to answer questions, and it's one of the things that we are the most proud of. Our staff is incredibly helpful and knowledgeable, and they will answer any questions about the Shakers that people may come with.
Lesley Herzberg, Curator of Hancock Shaker Village, thank you so much for joining us on PCTV on the Road here in your beautiful round barn.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
My pleasure. So this has been Pittsfield Community Television's look into yet another one of those fantastic places here in our beautiful city. I want to take this quick opportunity at the end of the show to continue to remind you that all of the stuff that you're seeing us doing when we go on the road is not just something that the Pittsfield staff does. It's not just something that our longtime volunteers do. It's something that you can do. Pittsfield Community Television is a nonprofit organization here to give you access to the cable lines that you help pay for. And we want to teach you how to make television. So we encourage you to come to our studios at 4 Federico Drive. Check out our website at www.pittsfieldtv.org. Find out some more about Pittsfield Community Television, and find out how you can go to some of the most interesting places here in the city of Pittsfield and become involved. So with that in mind, from the beautiful round barn at Hancock Shaker Village, I'm Matthew Tucker, Pittsfield Community Television's Public Access Coordinator, saying thank you for watching, and we'll see you when we're back on the road.